The evolution of the Delaware Statutory Trust. So how did we get to where we are today, which is cutting edge? And the cutting edge is someone does a sale of a property, they 1031 it with a QI, then they invest in a Delaware Statutory Trust that eventually converts to a REIT. How did we get here? What was the genesis? How did this all start? Well, it all started obviously about 100 years ago with the 1031 exchange. That was just property for property. But then we realized that people wanted to go from actively managing real estate to passively managing real estate. Basically, they wanted to be they wanted to shift from creating wealth to preserving wealth. So then came what's called the tenant in common. So what's the tenant in common? Was what was used probably starting 50 years ago, and its heyday lasted about 30 years until the last generation of the DST came along around 2004. So what was that last generation of the DST? We at Sera Capital call it the traditional DST. And the traditional DST was a single property, single asset. There was a number of sponsors in the industry, and due diligence was really critical, because if you picked the wrong DST, you could lose all your money, and a lot of people did, because there was a lot of lousy sponsors out there. There was a lot of bad deals. There was not the infrastructure to have actual good due diligence. So that is basically the state of affairs of the DST from 2004 to 2020. What happened in 2020? Some of the largest players in the real estate world, not this little cottage DST traditional business that had 40, 50, 60 employees. We're talking about massive companies with trillions of dollars said, we want to enter the DST space. So they came in and they just basically took it over. They started with a concept that is very appealing to people. They would do a Delaware Statutory Trust for about a two to two and a half year period, at which point it would convert to the REIT. So you take a company, and I'll just use like a JLL or a Brookfield or a Starwood or a Blue Owl, any of the big players in the world out there, Invesco, Hines. They create a DST. You 1031 into that DST. It pays you income. And then after a certain period of time, between 2 to 2.5 years, the REIT that created the DST, using section 721 of the code, turns around and buys that property, bringing you into the REIT. What does that create? Instant diversification, both geographically and by asset class. It creates steady, predictable income, and that's where we are today. That's where we are today. Now, here's the important thing to know. TICs still exist. They still exist out there. You want to go invest in a TIC? There's probably a bunch of small players out there doing it. You want to invest in a traditional DST, you know, we wish you luck, okay? Because now you're really, as far as I'm concerned, barking up the wrong tree. But they exist out there. And then the latest evolution, which is the DST that converts to the REIT. And the way I like to think of it is this way. The TIC was basically the equivalent of a black and white TV. The DST was the equivalent of a smart TV. And the DST that converts into a REIT is what we have technologically now. We have a smart TV that you can program. It's got AI. It's got everything. It's got everything you want. I'm not saying that there isn't going to be something better in the future, because there always will be. But the evolution of the DST that we have today is state-of-the-art, a DST that starts out as a single property that then converts to a REIT. Now, you're going to have some questions on this, but the simplest answer to that is watch more videos, because we have answers to other questions you have. Thank you.